Hi, just a short video taking you through the uh, text of Chapter 7, highlighting some important and interesting points, and particularly with regard to the questions and work that you are expected to do. So free speech issues start right up front with the very powerful issue of hate speech and what can be restricted, what can't be restricted, the issue of defining freedom of speech is a part or a legacy of John Stuart Mill, a very, very an incredibly diverse thinker who you remember meeting in Chapter 1 and reading aspects or excerpt from his On Liberty is one thing that you're doing this week. So again, his harm principle is one way to answer this. When does free speech stop? When does behavior or speech become in need of restriction? Whenever it affects other people, harms them in some way. That, of course, doesn't eliminate the dilemmas because these are tough questions. So as it says here, libertarians, that is, those are people that not necessarily political libertarians, but libertarians philosophically. This means somebody who argues for a large amount of liberty rights, as it says here, and that they should predominate over most other competing issues. Hate speech should be protected according to them because we have a right to express our ideas. Again, Lawrence's article is I am asking you to read, and Stanley Fish, is among the other good articles in here if you want to take a look at it. So we can think about, again, terms that are obvious that come up here: censorship, and what exactly, what kinds of things might be censored, and how our government and the behavior of citizens in a kind of connection of both legal and moral way is brought up by this issue. Again, we do have the First Amendment. This section here brings up some interesting historical examples of how free speech was tested, and all of this is interesting both to use as you think through the content of our work this week, as well as obviously to do more research on your own to learn more about it. Free speech in cyberspace is not that much a part of our articles. So clearly, this is a medium for much of our discourse now. So it's becoming more and more of an issue. You can see here, roughly 10 years ago, someone was charged with using the internet to help Al Qaeda. Again, this is represented in one of the case studies. Pornography and obscenity are issues that fall within here. Again, if we think of Mill's harm principle, what might be, how would harm be proven in this case? And clearly issues of what can and what can and can't be shown on various media, and how to restrict and decide that. So going back to the beginning, we have hate speech as protected speech. An interesting dilemma brought up here. Radio commentator Dr. Laura Schlesinger and her views on homosexuality. The case in the 70s on which ruled that neo-Nazis could march in a part of Illinois, predominantly Jewish neighborhood, And then an opposite ruling, if you will, a few years later, 1990, related to a Klan-type cross burning. So I think Lawrence's article is very good on this. As it says here, Lawrence argues that the social context in which hate speech takes place is morally relevant. And very interesting issue that all of us have to reflect on. And in other words, this line here about Charles Lawrence is reminding us that, there's not necessarily any hard and fast rules. Their issues on campuses have become extremely important in these last 20 years. Free speech zones, one of the major issues that involves a restriction on where you can actually exercise your free speech, that a lot of campuses have instituted. So something else to think about as you respond. The connection between the philosophers and the moral issues, again, Mills on Liberty is kind of a development out of John Locke's earlier emphasis on free speech, and we're going to, or the question I ask you on Mill is highlighted here right in the middle. It says, when it comes to expression of ideas, Mill was well aware of the dangers of the tyranny of the majority. This quote, which is used in the essay prompt, there needs to be protection also against the tyranny of the prevailing opinion and feeling, the tendency of society to impose by other means than civil penalties its own ideas and practices as rules of conduct on those who dissent from them. This idea, actually, just as an aside, it was also shared by another famous philosopher who happened to be born almost exactly the same time year as John Stuart Mill, Alexis de Tocqueville, a Frenchman who came over to America a few times in the 1830s and wrote a book called Democracy. Democracy in America, which he also is well known for this tyranny of the majority idea. So he and Mill were both thinking along the same lines, that it is kind of ironic that, there's just a screen issue there. Again, John Stuart Mill is our highlighted philosopher this week, this chapter. So we can run with that. Many of these moral issues do arise out of, in particular, Mill and Lawrence's articles. The idea of social order is indeed one of the primary reasons for restricting speech, and the notion of who disagrees, for example, with libertarian philosophers who argue, and in some sense, I guess, without the baggage that comes with libertarianism in general as a political framework as well. Now, John Stuart Mill is a libertarian, but yet pay attention to the fact of how he is generally always trying to couch his ideas and his views and language and develop a middle ground, if you will, that has often got him a lot of respect, and he's had a lot of influence as a result. Again, are we becoming an uncivil society? How do we respect dignity while also respecting freedom of speech? And then Mill's harm principle. some of the shorter sections here, which nonetheless have a lot of issues that can be interesting. Slippery slope issues. How in a pluralistic world do we advocate and practice tolerance without being too or being overly open, and then issues of justice and discrimination, etc. So again, to take you through the articles, you know from the previous video on the module what I'm asking you with regard to Mill, and again to pay attention to how this tyranny of the majority fits into his overall position, which is Mill was a very good writer, very clear, and he was advocating for the ability to dissent from the majority in order to get the ball rolling on equal treatment and the best result. He was very concerned with results. So Lawrence is talking about speech on campus, but of course it gets the way he raises it gets larger than that. And then of course the third article, which didn't really come up too much in the chapter content, Dershowitz's content coverage of political correctness. This kind of speaks for itself, but do note, as I said in the discussion board, that this is 30 years old, so it's interesting to think of what has arisen, what has changed in the way that this is dealt with in our culture now. All right, this gives you a good feel for how it all fits together. Let me know if you have any questions. See you next time.